The Sports Source is brought to you by Fast Frame. Turn your memorabilia into a work of art.
You are watching East Tennessee's first and only year-round sports talk show on television. This is The Sports Source with your host, John Pennington.
Good Sunday morning and welcome into the Sports Source. Tennessee, well, they beat Missouri in incredible fashion, one of the wildest games you'll ever see in Neyland Stadium. But they lost the SEC East to Florida, as you know by now. So does that make the season a failure? We'll discuss that with the media getting one shot at it, the players getting another shot. Do they agree? Do they disagree with one another? Was the season a failure? And some information and some numbers that I think are going to open your eyes. Really interesting stuff. I didn't know what we'd find when I went back looking, and it surprised me, some of the things I saw. So we'll have all of that big show today. Let's dive right in. First segment brought to you by Tennova Healthcare. When it comes to joint pain, so many people feel they have to live with it. But with recent innovations, top-notch orthopedic doctors, Tennova can help you beat joint pain. Visit Tennova.com to learn more about how they can help you with joint pain. Tennova Healthcare. All right, I want to welcome in the first round of panelists. We have Bob Hodge, Will Overstreet, VFL, back from Dubai. We have Jimmy Hyams, back from Central Knoxville. We have VFL David Ligon down there. Good to have all of you back with me. Let's just start by putting some numbers up on the screen. It was a real wild one yesterday. 100 points, 1,300 yards, 800 rushing yards, 500 passing yards, 65 first downs, and 14 touchdowns. It was like a Big 12 game broke out. 63-37 win for Tennessee. Just your general thoughts very quickly on what you saw yesterday. Offense, defense, what's your takeaway from that one?
I tell you what, my head was still kind of swimming about it. My biggest takeaway from it was just that Tennessee's offense, you've got some weapons, and I'm going to look forward a little bit to next year, and you've got some of these guys coming back. So I know that I don't want to wish my life away, but I'm more hopeful about next season than I was, because if you look at the receivers, if you look at the running backs, they looked really, really good. Don't know about Missouri's defense, but my takeaway from it was exciting ball game, and there's some stuff to look forward to here.
All right.
Well, if the offense puts fans in seats, I mean, that was a game right there. I mean, you talk about arena football. I thought we'd broken out with a smaller field. But really, truly, I mean, it is disappointing to see how bad this defense is performing right now. There's somewhere out there, Missouri Tigers still running with the ball. No one's touched him yet. I mean, right now, you watch that team, and it's hard to find many bright spots on the defensive team that's just getting blocked, man on man, hat on hat, getting pushed out of there.
Pushed around, yeah.
Just pushed around bad, opening up big holes. It does not look like an SEC caliber defense against an SEC caliber offense at times.
It is looking more and more like the 2012 season. Like when you go back and look at that one, and you'll quickly be reminded that, oh God, that was worse. That was worse, except in the run defense. But overall, that was worse. But this is getting into that ballpark of, all right, you're going to give up 700 yards to Troy if you play them. So it's getting bad. Jimmy, just your general thoughts very quickly on the game. What's your takeaway?
Josh Dobbs, he was brilliant, and maybe as good a game as I've seen a Tennessee quarterback play in his last game at Neyland. He accounted for 413 yards. He accounted for 5 touchdowns. His previous 3 games against Missouri, he had accounted for 2 touchdowns. So he was outstanding in that game, and the runs that he made, the throws that he made, I just thought it was a spectacular performance by Josh Dobbs, who's really been a role model in so many ways at Tennessee in his 4 years.
David Ligon.
I think I'm the same as Jimmy. I really enjoyed watching Josh Dobbs play. You know, he accounted for a lot of that production out there, whether throwing or running, just being a cool, level-headed leader out on the field. I think the biggest thing, though, is they went out, they took care of business early in the game. You know, you get it to halftime, a little worried that Missouri may be able to hang around, but eventually, you know, later in the game, we ran away with it and took care of business.
Their offense got tired.
Got tired of running.
They ran 110 plays.
That's insane.
Yeah.
Let me keep it down there with Jimmy and David. UT wins the battle, but Florida wins the war. They go down to LSU. LSU shoots itself in the foot all day. But bottom line is Florida got it done. And as people are pointing out, they had injuries yesterday. Now, the false equivalency is they didn't have nearly the injuries that Tennessee. Yes, they were missing some starters. They weren't also missing the backups behind them and the backups behind them and the backups behind them. But hey, that's just facts. Your thoughts on Florida winning the SEC East and coming back John Adams wrote today in the Sentinel that McElwain's done more in 2 years than Butch Jones has in 4. Hard to argue. He's got 2 East belts, doesn't he?
He does, and he has. I mean, and neither one of those teams were that good at Florida, but they figured out a way to win. They did it mostly with defense. He lost his starting quarterback 2 years in a row. One was pretty good, the other one wasn't. But still, for them to find a way to figure out how to win, I did not think they would beat LSU in Baton Rouge, but they did. So hats off to the Gators. They figured out a way and did it. As ugly as it was, they got it done.
I mean, it was a huge win for them to go into Baton Rouge, even though it wasn't a night game. It's still a big accomplishment to go win down there. And I think for Florida, yes, they had injuries, but they didn't have the decimation on the depth chart. You talk about us now, the defense giving up all these rushing yards. Well, why? I mean, you've got some really your big bodies on the defensive line aren't out there. They're not taking up double teams, allowing the linebackers to make plays. But ultimately, am I disappointed that we did not win the East and are going to Atlanta? Absolutely. It is what it is, though, and Florida took care of business, and that's what good teams do.
I think one thing that was clear, and it's becoming more and more clear, there is one great team in the SEC, and that's Alabama. Mm-hmm. Then there's a whole pile of pretty good teams. I think if Tennessee, Florida, Texas A&M, LSU all played each other 10 times, I think there's going to be a lot of teams beating each other over and over and over again. I'm not wowed by anybody in the B level.
Right. And let's face it, if you got to the SEC championship game with this defense that you're putting out on the field right now.
Oh, Tennessee, you're talking about?
Yeah. What was Alabama going to do to you on the scoreboard? 75? Possibly. I mean, but if they called the dogs off, but I'm just saying, right now.
Oh, I was talking about for the full game. I thought you meant the first half.
In terms of that LSU thing, you had the same joke I did this one. That is, once again, Ed Orgeron hurts UT. I did want to say this. Get your take on this. After the score was made known, everybody's on their phone. Tennessee fans leave in droves. Tens of thousands of fans on television.
It looked like the end of the game.
It looked like it was half empty to start the third quarter.
I was talking to you on the phone. I was sitting there watching people leave, and I think it was two things. One, you did have the Florida LSU game became final, and you could just feel some life being taken out of that entire stadium when everybody found out. Two, it was really cold, and
40s.
But here's the thing:
40s.
People didn't plan for it. You had a win, and a lot of people were sitting there in shirt sleeves. Now, I'm not taking up for them. If you were dumb enough to go to that game not dressed correctly, then the only option you had was to leave. The guy I go to games with was dumb enough not to go to that game dressed correctly.
I've sat.
And he was cold.
I've sat in snow and sleet, and slow and sneet. You don't want to sit and sneet. Snow and sleet. Lexington, Columbus, Ohio, Foxborough, Massachusetts. I didn't get up and walk away. Oh, it's cold. If you go to the game, you know what the temperature's going to be. You stay there. My thought is this. I think more of it had to do with LSU, Florida than the cold.
I think that was a lot of it, but I think a lot of people were.
I think you also have to say a lot of the fans are sitting there going, now that you've lost that motivation, but you're also watching the Missouri offense.
Yes.
You're thinking you're going to get beat, and maybe they just said, the heck with it. At least we don't have to suffer through it. You thought through that.
Well, that's fine. If they said, the heck with it, I'm leaving. But here's what I don't want to hear. And I have 15 people a week come up and say, well, we got the best fan base. Not if tens of thousands of people leave at halftime. Not if you boo your team when you're up 30, as happened earlier this year. I know the Tennessee fan base that I grew up with was the best. You couldn't beat it. But you can't say, we're the best. It's kind of chilly, and we might not win, I'm leaving. That doesn't work. I'm sorry. I'm not. My bigger issue, though, is if you've gotten to the point where these people are saying, and this part is all over. If you got to the point where people are saying, well, if it's not a championship, it's nothing. Well, why even watch football?
Yeah.
If you can't enjoy it, if it's not about being entertained for 12 weeks during the fall, if it all sucks unless you win the championship, then pick another hobby that makes you happy. Why be miserable? If you go to a game and if another team loses, so your championship hunt's out and you leave, go play golf. Oh, it's too cold for that. Do something else. Go ice fishing.
That's the attitude that I think you can make the argument that they got us to this point.
Okay, there we go. When we come back, was the season a failure? That comes up later. But next, why won't Butch call it a disappointment? Is he owning it? And some numbers on Josh Dobbs will make your eyes pop out of your head. Come on back.